A single dad named Noah adopts twin girls who were rejected by 13 families, but when he reads their birth certificate, the shocking truth leaves him absolutely stunned. What hidden secrets will Noah uncover about the twins' mysterious past, and how will it change everything he thought he knew? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Noah stood at the window of his empty house, his eyes fixed on the swing set in the backyard. The chains creaked softly in the breeze, a haunting reminder of laughter long silenced. He closed his eyes, memories of his daughter Emma flooding back. "Daddy, push me higher," her voice echoed in his mind. Noah's chest tightened, the familiar ache of loss squeezing his heart. It had been 3 years since the accident that took Emma away, but the pain felt as fresh as ever. He opened his eyes, blinking back tears. The house was too quiet now. Every room held memories of Emma, her toys still neatly arranged on shelves, her favorite stuffed bear sitting on her bed. Noah couldn't bring himself to change anything, as if preserving her room would somehow keep her close. He walked to the kitchen, his footsteps echoing in the silence. On the fridge, Emma's drawings were still held up by colorful magnets. Noah traced his finger over a crayon stick figure labeled Daddy. His throat tightened. "I miss you so much, sweetheart," he whispered. Noah poured himself a cup of coffee, the aroma doing little to lift his spirits. He sat at the kitchen table, staring into the dark liquid. The emptiness in his life felt overwhelming. Every day was a struggle to find purpose, to keep going without his little girl's smile to light up his world. Lately, thoughts of adoption had been creeping into his mind. The idea both terrified and intrigued him. Could he open his heart to another child? Would it be fair to that child, knowing he might never love them the same way he loved Emma? Noah's hands trembled slightly as he lifted the coffee cup to his lips. The thought of loving another child felt almost like a betrayal to Emma's memory. Yet the loneliness of his empty house was becoming unbearable. "What would you think, Emma?" he asked aloud, his voice barely a whisper. "Would you want Daddy to be happy again?" Tears slid down Noah's cheeks as he wrestled with his conflicting emotions. The desire to nurture and love a child again warred with his fear of replacing Emma, or worse, failing another child because of his own emotional scars. Noah's hands trembled as he gripped the steering wheel, pulling into the parking lot of Sunnyvale Adoption Agency. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. This was just a visit, he reminded himself, just to gather information. As he walked through the glass doors, the cheerful decor and children's artwork on the walls made his chest tighten. It reminded him so much of Emma's preschool. Noah swallowed hard and approached the receptionist. "I have an appointment with Ms. Thompson," he said quietly. A few minutes later, a kind-faced woman with graying hair greeted him. "Mr. Parker, I'm Lisa Thompson. Please come in." Noah followed her into a cozy office, settling into a plush chair. Ms. Thompson smiled warmly. "So, you're interested in adoption?" Noah nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I lost my daughter a few years ago. I think I'm ready to open my heart again." Ms. Thompson's eyes softened with understanding. "I'm so sorry for your loss. It takes great courage to consider adoption after such a tragedy." As they talked, Noah felt some of his tension ease. Ms. Thompson's gentle manner put him at ease. She explained the adoption process, answering his questions patiently. Then she hesitated for a moment. "Mr. Parker, there's a particular case I'd like to discuss with you. We have twin baby girls, Sarah and Sophie, who need a home." Noah's heart skipped a beat. Twins? He hadn't considered that possibility. Ms. Thompson continued, her voice soft. "These little ones have had a difficult start. They've been rejected by 13 families already." Noah's eyebrows shot up in surprise. 13? But why? "The girls have some emotional challenges due to their past," Ms. Thompson explained. "They need extra patience and care. Many families weren't prepared for that commitment." Noah felt a mix of emotions wash over him. His heart ached for these little girls who had already faced so much rejection. But doubt crept in too. Was he ready for such a challenge? Could he provide the love and stability these twins needed? "Would you like to know more about Sarah and Sophie?" Ms. Thompson asked gently. Noah hesitated, his mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. Part of him wanted to say yes immediately, while another part held back, afraid of the unknown. Noah nervously followed Ms. Thompson down the hallway to the nursery. His heart raced as they approached the room where Sarah and Sophie waited. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. As they entered, Noah's eyes fell on two tiny cribs side by side. In them lay two beautiful baby girls, no more than 6 months old. They looked so small, so vulnerable. Noah felt a lump form in his throat. "This is Sarah," Ms. Thompson said softly, gesturing to the baby on the left. "And this is Sophie." Noah stepped closer, his eyes taking in every detail. Sarah lay quietly, her big brown eyes watching him curiously. Sophie, on the other hand, wiggled and cooed, reaching out with chubby hands. "Would you like to hold one of them?" Ms. Thompson asked. Noah nodded, unable to speak. She gently lifted Sarah and placed her in Noah's arms. The weight of the tiny baby felt both familiar and strange. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes wide and trusting. Suddenly, Noah felt a wave of emotion crash over him. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced since Emma. His chest tightened and tears pricked at his eyes. He blinked them away, not wanting to frighten the baby. "Hi there, Sarah," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "It's nice to meet you." Sarah reached up, her tiny hand touching Noah's cheek. The simple gesture nearly undid him. He looked over at Sophie, who was now sitting up in her crib, watching intently. Ms. Thompson smiled. "They seem to like you, Mr. Parker." Noah couldn't deny the pull he felt toward these girls. Despite his fears and doubts, something about them touched his heart. He gently rocked Sarah, marveling at how natural it felt. "Would you like to hold Sophie too?" Ms. Thompson asked. Noah nodded, carefully handing Sarah back. As he cradled Sophie, he noticed the differences between the twins. Where Sarah was quiet and observant, Sophie was more animated, her little legs kicking excitedly. As Noah stood there holding Sophie and gazing at Sarah, he felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him. Joy, fear, hope, and sadness all battled for dominance. These babies needed love, stability, and patience, things he wasn't sure he could provide. Yet he couldn't deny the connection he felt. As Noah reluctantly handed Sophie back to Ms. Thompson, the social worker's expression grew serious. She gestured for him to take a seat in the small office adjacent to the nursery. "Mr. Parker, there's something you need to know about Sarah and Sophie," Ms. Thompson began, her voice gentle but firm. "Their start in life hasn't been easy." Noah's heart sank. He'd known there must be a reason why so many families had passed on the twins, but hearing it confirmed made his chest tighten. Ms. Thompson continued, "They spent their first few months in a chaotic environment and both of their parents are dead due to severe accident." She paused, allowing the information to sink in. "They may face developmental challenges and will need extra care and patience." Noah sat in stunned silence, his mind racing. He thought of the sweet babies he'd just held, trying to reconcile their innocent faces with the harsh reality of their beginnings. I don't know if I can handle that," Noah admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. Ms. Thompson nodded sympathetically. "It's a lot to consider, Mr. Parker. Take some time to think it over." Noah left the adoption agency with a heavy heart. As he drove home, memories of his daughter Emma flooded his mind. He remembered her as a baby, so small and perfect in his arms. The love he'd felt for her had been instant and all-consuming. At home, Noah found himself in Emma's old room. He hadn't changed a thing since she'd passed. Sitting on her small bed, he picked up a stuffed rabbit she'd loved. Tears fell freely as he recalled reading bedtime stories. Emma cuddled close, her laughter filling the room. He thought of the countless nights he'd spent rocking her to sleep, singing softly as she drifted off. The memory of her first steps, her first words, all the milestones they'd celebrated together. It all came rushing back. Noah's heart ached with the enormity of his love for Emma and the pain of losing her. Could he ever love another child that way? And if he could, was he strong enough to help Sarah and Sophie overcome their difficult start? As the evening wore on, Noah wrestled with his emotions. The thought of opening his heart again terrified him, yet he couldn't shake the image of those two little girls, so in need of love and stability. Noah spent the next few days in deep contemplation. The quiet of his house, once a comfort, now felt oppressive. He found himself thinking constantly about Sarah and Sophie, their tiny faces etched in his memory. One morning, as he sat at his kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee, Noah's gaze fell on a family photo. It showed him, his late wife, and Emma at the park, all smiles and laughter. A realization washed over him. The love he'd shared with Emma wasn't meant to be locked away. It was a gift, one that could grow and extend to others who needed it. With trembling hands, Noah picked up his phone and dialed the adoption agency. "Ms. Thompson, it's Noah Parker. I'd like to move forward with adopting Sarah and Sophie." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Noah threw himself into the adoption process, filling out stacks of paperwork and attending parenting classes. Each step brought a mix of excitement and anxiety, but he pushed through, driven by the thought of giving the twins a loving home. As he prepared the nursery, Noah found himself talking to Emma's memory. "I hope you understand, sweetheart," he whispered as he assembled a crib. "I'm not replacing you. I'm just expanding our family." The day before he was set to bring the girls home, Noah stood in the newly decorated nursery. Soft pink walls, 2 white cribs, and a rocking chair in the corner. It was perfect. He ran his hand over a stuffed bunny similar to Emma's favorite, that sat waiting for its new owners. Noah's heart raced with anticipation and a touch of fear. Was he really ready for this? Could he be the father these girls needed? As doubt crept in, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He thought of Sarah and Sophie, of their difficult start in life, and of the love he had to give. "We'll figure it out together," he said softly, a small smile forming on his lips. "It won't be easy, but we'll make it work." After a few days, Noah's hands trembled as he unlocked the front door, carefully balancing the car seats holding Sarah and Sophie. The twins, barely 6 months old, blinked sleepily as he carried them into their new home. "Well, girls," he said softly, "this is it. Welcome home." He set the car seats down in the living room and gently unbuckled the babies. Sarah yawned, her tiny fist rubbing at her eyes, while Sophie looked around with wide, curious eyes. Noah's heart swelled with a mix of love and anxiety as he cradled them both. The first few hours went smoothly. The girls seemed content, cooing softly as Noah showed them around the house. He fed them their bottles and changed their diapers, feeling a small sense of accomplishment with each task. But as night fell, everything changed. It started with Sophie's whimper, quickly followed by Sarah's full-throated wail. Noah rushed to the nursery, his mind racing. "What's wrong? Are you hungry? Wet?" He checked their diapers, offered bottles, and rocked them gently. Nothing seemed to help. The crying grew louder, more insistent. Noah felt a knot forming in his stomach as the minutes ticked by. "Shh, it's okay," he murmured, bouncing them gently. "You're safe here. I've got you." But the twins continued to cry, their little faces red with effort. Noah paced the nursery, then the living room, then back again. The house that had been so quiet for so long now echoed with the sounds of distress. As the clock struck midnight, Noah felt the first stirrings of real panic. He'd known it would be hard. But this felt impossible. The girls were inconsolable, and he felt utterly helpless. "What am I doing wrong?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Maybe I'm not cut out for this after all." Doubt crept in, cold and insistent. Had he made a terrible mistake? These girls needed someone strong, someone who knew what they were doing, not a broken man still mourning his own loss. Noah sank into the rocking chair, the crying babies held close to his chest. Tears pricked at his eyes as he looked down at Sarah and Sophie's upset faces. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I don't know if I can do this." As dawn broke, Noah finally managed to soothe the twins to sleep. Exhausted, he slumped onto the couch, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The night had been long and trying, but a tiny spark of hope flickered in his heart. They had made it through their first night together. Later that morning, with the girls napping peacefully, Noah decided to organize their belongings. He opened the box the adoption agency had given him, filled with the twins' few possessions and important documents. As he sorted through the items, his fingers brushed against two official-looking papers. Noah pulled them out, realizing they were Sarah and Sophie's birth certificates. His eyes scanned the documents, taking in the details. Suddenly, he froze, his breath catching in his throat. The date, the hospital name, they were exactly the same as his daughter's. Noah's hands trembled as he stared at the certificates. Sarah and Sophie had been born on the very same day, in the very same hospital but different year, as his late daughter. The coincidence seemed too incredible to be real. How is this possible?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. A wave of emotion washed over him. Noah felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the implications. Could this be more than just chance? Was it possible that some greater force had brought these girls into his life? He looked towards the nursery where Sarah and Sophie slept, his heart pounding. The struggles of the night before suddenly seemed less daunting. In their place, a sense of purpose began to grow. "Maybe," Noah murmured, "maybe this was meant to be." He traced the date on the birth certificates with his finger, remembering the joy he had felt on that day years ago when his own daughter was born. Now, here were two more little girls, born at the exact date and place, who needed his love and care. Noah took a deep breath, feeling a shift within himself. The fear and doubt that had plagued him began to recede, replaced by a growing certainty. This adoption, these girls, it all felt like fate. Noah's days quickly filled with the constant demands of caring for twin babies. He found himself in a whirlwind of diaper changes, feedings, and soothing cries. The exhaustion was overwhelming, but beneath it all, a tiny seed of joy had begun to take root. One afternoon, as Sarah and Sophie lay on a blanket in the living room, Noah remembered how much his late daughter had loved to play with colorful toys. With a lump in his throat, he dug out a box of her old playthings from the closet. "Let's see if you girls like these as much as she did," he said softly, his voice catching. Noah placed a set of soft blocks near the twins. Sophie immediately reached out, grasping a red cube with her tiny fingers. Sarah, always the more cautious one, watched her sister with wide eyes before tentatively touching a yellow block. As he watched them explore, Noah felt a bittersweet ache in his chest. The sight of the girls playing with his daughter's toys brought back a flood of memories. He closed his eyes for a moment, fighting back tears. "It's okay," he whispered to himself. "It's okay to feel this way." Over the next few days, Noah introduced more activities his daughter had enjoyed. He sang the same lullabies to Sarah and Sophie, read them her favorite bedtime stories, and even took them to the park where he used to push her on the swings. Each shared experience was both painful and healing. Noah found himself laughing at Sophie's attempts to crawl, then crying moments later as he remembered his daughter's first steps. The emotions were intense and often conflicting, leaving him feeling raw and vulnerable. One evening, as he rocked the girls to sleep, Noah realized something had changed. The love he felt for Sarah and Sophie was different from what he'd shared with his daughter, but it was no less powerful. It was a love born from choice, from commitment, from the daily act of caring for these two little lives. "We're going to be okay," he murmured, looking down at their peaceful faces. "All three of us. We're going to be okay." As the days turned into weeks, Noah found himself settling into a routine with Sarah and Sophie. However, the nights remained a challenge. The twins' cries often echoed through the house, their little voices filled with distress that Noah couldn't seem to soothe. One particularly difficult night, Noah paced the nursery, gently bouncing Sophie in his arms while Sarah whimpered in her crib. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed his exhaustion, but his voice remained soft and patient. "Shh, it's okay," he murmured, his hand rubbing soothing circles on Sophie's back. "You're safe here. I've got you." Despite his reassurances, the babies continued to fuss, their tiny faces scrunched up in discomfort, and their bodies tensed with anxiety. Noah's heart ached, knowing the trauma they had endured in their short lives was manifesting in these moments of distress. During the day, Noah noticed other signs of the twins' troubled past. Sarah would startle at sudden noises, her eyes wide with fear. Sophie often clung to Noah, refusing to be put down even for a moment. Their behavior was erratic, swinging between moments of calm and sudden outbursts of crying. Noah felt overwhelmed. There were times when he wondered if he was truly equipped to handle the emotional needs of these two fragile little girls. But then he'd look into their innocent eyes, and his resolve would strengthen. "We're in this together," he'd tell them, even though they were too young to understand his words. "I promise I'm not going anywhere." Noah knew that consistency and love were key. He stuck to routines, offering the twins the stability they had lacked before. He read to them, sang to them, and held them close, determined to show them that they were safe and loved. As Noah settled into the rhythm of caring for Sarah and Sophie, moments of quiet reflection became more frequent. During nap time, he often found himself gazing at the twins' peaceful faces, their tiny chests rising and falling with each breath. In these still moments, memories of his late daughter, Emma, would wash over him like a gentle wave. He remembered her first steps, her giggles, and the way her eyes lit up when he read her favorite bedtime story. The pain of her loss was still there, a dull ache in his heart, but it was now accompanied by something new, a growing love for Sarah and Sophie. One afternoon, as Noah sat on the living room floor, helping the twins with their tummy time, he noticed Sophie reaching for a colorful toy. Her determined little face reminded him so much of Emma at that age. A lump formed in his throat, but instead of the usual crushing sadness, he felt a spark of joy. "That's it, Sophie," he encouraged softly, his voice thick with emotion. "You can do it, sweetie." As Sophie's tiny fingers closed around the toy, Noah felt a surge of pride. He glanced over at Sarah, who was contentedly chewing on a soft book, and his heart swelled with affection for both girls. It dawned on Noah that he was beginning to see Sarah and Sophie as more than just children he was caring for. They were becoming his daughters. The realization both thrilled and terrified him. Was he ready to open his heart fully again? Could he be the father these girls deserved? Noah's thoughts drifted to Emma once more. He wondered what she would think of her little sisters. The idea of Emma as a big sister brought a bittersweet smile to his face. It was then that Noah began to understand. Sarah and Sophie weren't replacing Emma. They were expanding his capacity to love. As he helped the twins with their afternoon bottles, Noah whispered, "I think I'm getting a second chance at being a dad, girls, and I promise I'll do my best to make the most of it." As the weeks passed, Noah found himself increasingly drained by the twins' persistent nightmares. Night after night, he was jolted awake by their terrified cries, his heart aching for the trauma they had endured in their short lives. One particularly difficult morning after another sleepless night, Noah stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and the weight of exhaustion hung heavy on his shoulders. He knew he couldn't continue like this alone. With trembling hands, Noah reached for his phone and searched for local parenting support groups. He found a meeting scheduled for that evening at a nearby community center. Taking a deep breath, he made the decision to attend. As Noah walked into the brightly lit room, he felt a mix of anxiety and hope. The circle of chairs was already filled with parents, their faces etched with varying degrees of worry and fatigue. A kind-faced woman gestured to an empty seat, and Noah sat down, his heart pounding. "Welcome, everyone," the group leader began. "We're here to support each other through the joys and challenges of parenting. Would anyone like to share today?" Noah hesitated, his throat tight with emotion. Then, slowly, he raised his hand. "I'm Noah," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I recently adopted twin girls." As Noah began to speak, the words tumbled out like a dam breaking. He told them about Emma, the daughter he had lost, and how her absence had left a gaping hole in his life. He shared the story of Sarah and Sophie, their difficult past and the nightmares that plagued their sleep. "I want to help them so badly," Noah said, tears welling in his eyes. "But sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. I don't know if I'm doing enough, or if I'm even the right person to help them heal." The room fell silent for a moment, and Noah feared he had said too much. Then, one by one, other parents began to share their own struggles and offer words of encouragement. As Noah shared his story with the support group, he felt a small weight lift from his shoulders. The empathy and understanding he received from the other parents gave him a renewed sense of purpose. He left the meeting feeling less alone, armed with new strategies to help the twins through their nightmares. Over the next few days, Noah implemented some of the suggestions he'd learned. He created a soothing bedtime routine, playing soft lullabies and reading gentle stories to Sarah and Sophie. Slowly but surely, the frequency of their nightmares began to decrease. One sunny afternoon, as Noah sat on the living room floor with the twins, he picked up a soft, colorful rattle. He shook it gently, the tinkling sound filling the air. Sarah's eyes widened with curiosity, and suddenly her little face lit up with a smile. It was small but unmistakable. Noah's heart skipped a beat. "Sarah," he whispered, "are you smiling for me?" As if in response, Sophie let out a tiny giggle, her chubby hands reaching for the rattle. Noah felt a surge of joy wash over him, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. He shook the rattle again, and both girls erupted into peals of laughter, their faces beaming with pure, innocent happiness. For a moment, Noah basked in the warmth of their laughter, feeling a spark of hope ignite in his chest. This was a breakthrough, a sign that the twins were beginning to feel safe and loved in their new home. But as quickly as the joy had come, a familiar ache settled in Noah's heart. He couldn't help but think of Emma, his late daughter, and the first time she had smiled at him. The memory was so vivid, so precious that it threatened to overshadow the present moment. Noah tried to push the thought away, to focus on Sarah and Sophie's happiness, but the grief lingered like a shadow. He felt torn between the joy of this new milestone with the twins and the persistent sorrow of his loss. Noah hesitated at the entrance of the community center, his hands tightly gripping the handles of the double stroller. The sound of babies babbling and parents chatting filled the air. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. As he pushed the stroller into the room, Noah felt all eyes turn to him. The other parents, mostly mothers, smiled politely, but he could sense their curiosity. He was clearly the odd one out, a single father with twin girls. "Welcome," a cheerful instructor greeted him. "You must be Noah. We're so glad you and the girls could join us today." Noah nodded, managing a small smile. "Thanks. We're, still getting used to new places." He settled Sarah and Sophie onto a colorful playmat, surrounded by other babies and their parents. The twins looked around with wide eyes, clearly overwhelmed by the new sights and sounds. As the class began, Noah found himself fumbling through the activities. He watched the other parents effortlessly guiding their babies through songs and movements, while he struggled to keep up with both Sarah and Sophie. "It's okay, you're doing great," a kind voice beside him said. Noah looked up to see a woman smiling at him encouragingly. Just as Noah was about to respond, something caught his eye. Sophie, usually the more reserved of the twins, had scooted closer to a baby boy next to her. She reached out, her tiny hand touching the boy's arm. Then, to Noah's amazement, Sophie let out a delighted laugh. The room seemed to fade away as Noah watched Sophie interact with the other baby. Her eyes sparkled with joy, and for a moment, she looked like any other happy, carefree child. Noah felt a lump form in his throat. This simple act of Sophie reaching out, of connecting with another child, filled him with an unexpected sense of pride. It was a small step, but it showed that the twins were beginning to trust the world around them. As he looked at Sarah, he noticed she was watching her sister with curiosity, a hint of a smile on her face. Noah realized that both girls were slowly but surely coming out of their shells. The next day, Noah decided to take Sarah and Sophie to the local park. As he pushed the stroller along the winding path, memories of his late daughter flooded his mind. He remembered her squeals of delight as she chased butterflies and her infectious laughter as she swung higher and higher. Noah swallowed hard, pushing the bittersweet thoughts aside. He was here for Sarah and Sophie now. They needed him to be present, to show them the joys of the world they were just beginning to explore. He settled the twins on a soft patch of grass near the playground. Sarah clung to her blanket, eyeing the unfamiliar surroundings warily. Sophie, however, seemed intrigued by the colorful leaves scattered around them. "Look, girls," Noah said softly, picking up a bright red leaf. He held it out to them, smiling encouragingly. "Isn't it pretty?" To his surprise, Sophie reached out and grabbed the leaf, her tiny fingers curling around its edges. She brought it close to her face, examining it with wide-eyed wonder. Then, unexpectedly, a small giggle escaped her lips. Noah's heart skipped a beat. It was the first time he'd heard either of the twins laugh since they'd come home with him. The sound was like music to his ears, reminiscent of his daughter's laughter, yet uniquely Sophie's. Encouraged, Noah gathered more leaves, creating a small pile between the girls. Sarah, curiosity overcoming her initial hesitation, joined her sister in exploring the new textures and colors. As Noah watched the twins play, he felt a warmth spread through his chest. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, a mixture of joy and hope. For a moment, he allowed himself to bask in the simple pleasure of seeing Sarah and Sophie happy. But then, like a dark cloud passing over the sun, the grief crept back in. Noah's smile faltered as he thought of his daughter, of all the moments like this that he would never share with her again. The joy he felt watching Sarah and Sophie play was tinged with a deep, aching sadness. Noah closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He wanted to fully embrace this moment of happiness with the twins, but the weight of his loss still held him back. It was a constant battle, one he wasn't sure he would ever completely win. A few days later, Noah decided to attend a community potluck at the local church. He hesitated at first, unsure about bringing the twins to such a crowded event, but he knew they needed more social interaction, and he could use some adult conversation himself. As Noah entered the bustling church hall, Sarah and Sophie nestled safely in their double stroller. He felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see a familiar face, his old friend, Mark. "Noah, is that really you?" Mark's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with warmth. "It's been too long, my friend." Noah managed a small smile. "Hey, Mark. Yeah, it's been a while." Mark's gaze fell to the twins. "And who are these little angels?" "This is Sarah and Sophie," Noah replied, his voice quiet but tinged with pride. I adopted them recently." Mark's eyebrows rose, but his smile grew wider. "That's wonderful, Noah. Truly wonderful." As they found a quiet corner to talk, Mark's expression turned serious. "I heard about what happened to Emma. I'm so sorry, Noah. I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you." Noah felt the familiar ache in his chest at the mention of his daughter's name. He nodded, unable to find words. Mark leaned in, his voice gentle. "You know, I lost my brother a few years back. It nearly broke me, but I want you to know, it does get better. The pain, it doesn't go away, but it changes. It becomes a part of you, shaping you into someone stronger." Noah listened, his eyes fixed on the twins as they cooed softly in their stroller. Mark continued, "When I adopted my dog, Max, it was like a light came back into my life. He needed me, and in a way, I needed him too. It didn't replace my brother, but it gave me a new purpose, a reason to keep going." Noah felt a lump form in his throat. Mark's words resonated deeply with him, mirroring his own conflicted feelings about Sarah and Sophie. "These girls," Mark said, nodding towards the twins, "they're not replacing Emma, but they're giving you a chance to love again, to heal. It's okay to embrace that, Noah. It doesn't dishonor Emma's memory. If anything, it celebrates the love you have to give." The following weekend, Noah decided to tackle the attic. It had been months since he'd ventured up there, the space filled with memories he wasn't ready to face. But with the twins napping peacefully downstairs, he felt a sudden urge to confront the past. As he climbed the creaky stairs, dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the small window. Noah's eyes fell on a familiar cardboard box tucked away in the corner. His heart clenched. It was Emma's. With trembling hands, he pulled the box closer and lifted the lid. The scent of strawberry shampoo, Emma's favorite, wafted up, and Noah's eyes stung with unshed tears. He rummaged through the contents, a worn teddy bear, a collection of seashells from their last beach trip, and a stack of colorful drawings. At the bottom of the box, a pale blue envelope caught his attention. Noah's breath hitched as he recognized Emma's messy handwriting. "To Daddy," it read. With shaking fingers, he opened the letter and began to read. "Dear Daddy, I know I'm only 8, but I wanted to tell you how much I love you. You're the best dad in the whole wide world. Remember when you taught me to ride my bike? I was so scared, but you never let go until I was ready. That's what makes you special, Daddy. You always know when to hold on and when to let go. I hope that when I grow up, I can be as kind and strong as you. You make me feel safe and loved every day. I love you to the moon and back, and that's really far. Your little princess, Emma." Noah's vision blurred as tears streamed down his face. He clutched the letter to his chest, overwhelmed by the rush of love and grief. Emma's words echoed in his mind, reminding him of the deep bond they shared. As he sat there surrounded by Emma's things, Noah heard a soft cry from downstairs. Sarah or Sophie had woken up. He looked at the letter once more, then carefully folded it and placed it in his pocket. Noah descended the attic stairs, his heart heavy with emotion. As he entered the twins' room, he found Sarah awake, her big brown eyes watching him intently. Sophie stirred moments later, her tiny fists waving in the air. "Hey there, little ones," Noah said softly, his voice still thick with emotion. He gently picked up Sarah, cradling her close. "Did you have a good nap?" Sarah nestled into his chest, her small hand gripping his shirt. Noah felt a warmth spread through him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. He reached down to stroke Sophie's cheek, and she gurgled happily, reaching for his finger. Over the next few weeks, Noah began to notice the distinct personalities of the twins emerging. Sarah was often content to sit quietly, her eyes taking in everything around her. She seemed to sense Noah's moods, snuggling closer when he felt sad, or offering a toothless smile when he was happy. Sophie, on the other hand, was a bundle of energy. She babbled constantly, her chubby legs kicking with excitement whenever Noah entered the room. She loved to explore, always reaching for new toys or trying to crawl towards anything that caught her eye. One sunny afternoon, Noah sat on the living room floor, surrounded by toys and books. Sarah was curled up in his lap, her fingers tracing the pictures in a storybook. Sophie was nearby, determinedly trying to stack colorful blocks. As Noah watched the girls, he felt a surge of love so strong it almost took his breath away. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes full of trust, while Sophie let out a peal of laughter as her tower of blocks tumbled down. For a moment, Noah allowed himself to bask in the joy of the moment. But then, as it often did, a pang of guilt crept in. He thought of Emma, of the life they should have had together. Was it wrong to feel this happiness with Sarah and Sophie? Could he ever love them as much as he loved Emma? Noah's eyes welled up with tears, a mix of love and fear washing over him. He hugged Sarah closer and reached out to ruffle Sophie's hair, trying to reconcile the love he felt for these two precious girls with the ache in his heart for the daughter he had lost. Noah sat at his desk sifting through a stack of papers related to the twins' adoption. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the scattered documents. As he organized the files, his eyes fell upon a familiar name that made his heart skip a beat. "Thomas Mitchell," Noah whispered, his fingers tracing the name on the birth certificate. Memories flooded back. Summer days spent climbing trees, shared dreams of adventure, and long talks about the future. Thomas had been his best friend growing up, but they had drifted apart after high school. With trembling hands, Noah read further. There it was in black and white. The biological parents of Sarah and Sophie were Thomas Mitchell and Jessica Mitchell. He leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. His old friend Thomas and Jessica had died in a car accident just months after the twins were born. Noah felt a deep ache in his chest, mourning the loss of his old friend and the life he never knew Thomas had lived. "Oh, Thomas," Noah murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I had no idea." He glanced towards the nursery where the twins were napping. Suddenly, their presence in his life took on a new meaning. These weren't just any orphaned children he had chosen to adopt. They were the daughters of his childhood best friend. Noah's mind raced with questions. How had he not known about Thomas's children? Why hadn't anyone reached out to him? The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders as he realized the profound connection he shared with these little girls. As if on cue, a soft cry came from the nursery. Noah stood up, his legs unsteady, and made his way to check on the twins. Looking down at their sleeping faces, he saw traces of Thomas in their features, the curve of Sarah's nose, the shape of Sophie's eyes. Tears welled up in Noah's eyes as he gently stroked each girl's cheek. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Your dad was my best friend, and I promise I'll take care of you both." Noah sank into the rocking chair in the nursery, his mind whirling with the newfound information. Noah's thoughts were far away, lost in memories of his childhood friend Thomas. He closed his eyes, picturing Thomas's easy smile and carefree laugh. How had life taken such different turns for them? Noah felt a pang of guilt wash over him. If only he had stayed in touch, maybe he could have been there for Thomas and Jessica when the twins were born. "I'm so sorry, Thomas," Noah whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "I should have been there." The weight of responsibility pressed down on Noah's chest. These weren't just any children he had chosen to adopt. They were the daughters of his best friend. The cosmic twist of fate left him reeling. How could he possibly live up to the task of raising Thomas's girls? Fear crept into Noah's heart as he looked at the sleeping twins. He was already struggling to connect with them, battling his own grief and doubts. Now, knowing their connection to Thomas, the pressure felt almost unbearable. "What if I'm not enough?" Noah murmured, his hands trembling slightly. "What if I can't give them the life Thomas would have wanted for them?" The enormity of the situation crashed over Noah like a tidal wave. He was a single father, still grappling with his own loss, now tasked with raising the children of his late friend. The coincidence seemed too great to be mere chance, yet Noah felt woefully unprepared for the challenge. As Sophie stirred in her sleep, Noah reached out and gently patted her back. The simple act of comfort brought a lump to his throat. These girls had already lost so much: their parents, their sense of security. And now they were depending on him, a man still trying to piece his own life back together. Noah's mind raced with questions and doubts. How could he possibly fill the shoes of both a father and a link to their past? The responsibility felt overwhelming, yet he knew he couldn't let Thomas down. He owed it to his friend, to these innocent girls, to be the best father he could be. The next day, Noah stood at the edge of the cemetery, his heart heavy with a mixture of grief and newfound purpose. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rows of headstones as he made his way to his daughter's final resting place. Each step felt like a journey through time, connecting his past to his uncertain present. As he approached the familiar granite marker, Noah's eyes welled with tears. He knelt down, gently placing a small bouquet of wildflowers at the base of the stone. "Hi, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Daddy's here." Noah traced the letters of his daughter's name with trembling fingers. The cool stone beneath his touch grounded him, anchoring him to this moment of reflection. "I miss you so much," he continued, his words barely audible. "I wish you were here to help me figure this all out." He closed his eyes, letting the memories of his daughter wash over him. Her laughter, her curiosity, the way her eyes lit up when she learned something new. Noah felt a familiar ache in his chest, but alongside it, a flicker of something else. Hope. "I've got 2 little girls now," Noah said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Sarah and Sophie. They need me. just like you did. And I'm scared, honey. I'm scared I won't be enough for them." A gentle breeze rustled through the nearby trees, carrying with it the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Noah took a deep breath, drawing strength from the peaceful surroundings. "But I promise you, I'm going to try my best," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "These girls deserve a loving home, and I'm going to give it to them. I know it's what you would want me to do." As Noah sat there, pouring out his heart to his daughter's memory, he felt a subtle shift within himself. The weight of his grief didn't disappear, but it seemed to make room for something new, a determination to honor his daughter's memory by being the father Sarah and Sophie needed. "I'll always love you, sweetheart," Noah said softly, standing up and brushing off his knees. "And I'm going to love Sarah and Sophie too, I promise." With one last look at the headstone, Noah turned and walked back through the cemetery. His steps were steadier now, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to face it, for the twins, for Thomas, and for the daughter he would always carry in his heart. Noah returned home, his heart lighter than it had been in years. The visit to his daughter's grave had given him a renewed sense of purpose, and he felt ready to embrace his role as a father to Sarah and Sophie. As he walked through the front door, he heard the soft babbling of the twins coming from the living room. Their caregiver, Mrs. Johnson, greeted him with a warm smile. "They've been angels today, Mr. Parker," she said, gathering her things. "I think they're starting to feel more at home." Noah thanked her and made his way to the girls. They were sitting on a playmat, surrounded by colorful toys. Sarah was chewing on a teething ring, while Sophie was reaching for a stuffed elephant. He knelt down beside them, his heart swelling with affection. "Hey there, little ones," he said softly. "Daddy's home." Sophie looked up at him, her big blue eyes curious. She held out the elephant to him, babbling excitedly. Noah took it gently, pretending to make it dance for her. Her delighted giggle filled the room, and even Sarah stopped her chewing to watch. As Noah played with the twins, his mind wandered to their parents, his old friend Thomas, and his friend's wife, Jessica. He thought about the connection he had shared with them, the memories of their childhood together, and the tragic twist of fate that had brought their daughters into his life. "One day," he whispered to the girls, "I'll tell you all about your mom and dad, about how brave and kind they were, and how much they loved you." For now, though, Noah knew his most important task was to create a loving and secure home for Sarah and Sophie. He wanted to give them the stability they needed, to help them grow into happy, confident little girls. Noah scooped up both twins, one in each arm, and held them close. "We're going to be okay," he said, more to himself than to them. "We're going to be a family." Noah sat on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes of old memories. He'd finally mustered the courage to go through some of his late wife's belongings. As he sifted through the items, his fingers brushed against something cool and metallic. Curious, he pulled out a small silver locket. His breath caught in his throat as he recognized it. It was the engraved locket he had given his wife on their first anniversary. With trembling hands, he opened it, revealing a tiny photo of them on their wedding day. Tears welled up in Noah's eyes as he traced the engraving with his thumb. "To my love, forever and always," it read. He closed his eyes, remembering the day he had presented it to her, the joy on her face, and the love that had filled their home. Just then, he heard the soft cooing of Sarah and Sophie from their playpen. Noah looked over at the twins, a bittersweet smile crossing his face. He stood up, clutching the locket, and made his way to the girls. "Hey there, little ones," he said softly, kneeling beside them. "I have something special to show you." Sarah and Sophie looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. Noah held out the locket, letting it dangle in front of them. The silver caught the light, sparkling and capturing their attention. "This belonged to someone very special," Noah explained, his voice thick with emotion. Well, she would have been like a mother to you, and she would have loved you both so much." As if sensing the importance of the moment, the twins fell silent, their eyes fixed on the locket and Noah's face. Sophie reached out a tiny hand, gently touching the shiny surface. Noah felt a lump form in his throat. I think "I think she'd want you to have this," he said, carefully placing the locket in between the twins. "To always remember that you're loved, even by those who aren't here with us." As the girls examined the locket with wonder, Noah felt a wave of peace wash over him. It was as if his wife's love was filling the room, embracing him and the twins. For the first time since bringing Sarah and Sophie home, he felt truly at peace with his decision. As the days turned into weeks, Noah noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere of their home. The once constant cries of Sarah and Sophie had given way to giggles and coos. The twins were settling into a routine, and with each passing day, they seemed more at ease in their new surroundings. Noah watched with a mixture of joy and amazement as the girls began to show their unique personalities. Sarah, always the quieter one, would contentedly play with her stuffed animals, occasionally glancing up at Noah with her big, soulful eyes. Sophie, on the other hand, was a bundle of energy, crawling around the living room and babbling happily to herself. One sunny afternoon, as Noah sat on the floor with the twins, he realized something had changed. The weight of grief that had been his constant companion for so long felt lighter. He watched as Sophie stacked colorful blocks, her face scrunched in concentration, while Sarah snuggled against his side, thumb in her mouth. "Look at you two," Noah said softly, a smile tugging at his lips. "You're getting so big." Sophie looked up at him, her eyes sparkling with mischief, and deliberately knocked over her tower of blocks. She burst into a fit of giggles, and Noah couldn't help but laugh along with her. "Oh, you think that's funny, do you?" he chuckled, tickling her tummy gently. As Sophie's laughter filled the room, Noah felt a warmth spread through his chest. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, the simple joy of being part of a family. He glanced at the mantelpiece where he had placed the silver locket, now flanked by photos of Sarah and Sophie. The sight of it no longer brought a sharp pang of pain, but rather a bittersweet fondness. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Noah murmured, more to himself than the twins. He thought back to those first challenging nights, the doubts that had plagued him and the fear that he might never be able to love these girls as his own. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the nursery window, Noah gently lifted Sarah and Sophie into their cribs. The twins, now content and sleepy after their evening bottle, gazed up at him with heavy-lidded eyes. Noah smiled softly, tucking a blanket around each of them. "Time for sleep, little ones," he whispered. As he stood between the cribs, a memory stirred in his heart. Without thinking, he began to hum a familiar tune, the lullaby he used to sing to his daughter every night. The melody, sweet and gentle, filled the quiet room. Noah's voice, a little shaky at first, grew stronger as he sang the words he thought he'd never utter again. "Hush now, my darling, close your eyes. Let dreams take you to starry skies. I'll be here when morning comes, to greet you with the rising sun." As he sang, Noah watched the twins' eyes grow heavier. Sarah's thumb found its way to her mouth while Sophie clutched her favorite stuffed bunny. The sight of them, so peaceful and trusting, brought a lump to Noah's throat. He continued the lullaby, his voice soft and soothing. "Sleep tight, my love, don't you fear, for I am always near. In your dreams or when you wake, my love for you will never break." As the last notes faded, Noah realized both girls had drifted off to sleep. Their tiny chests rose and fell in a steady rhythm, their faces serene and untroubled. Standing there in the dim light of the nursery, Noah felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He thought of how far they had all come, from those first difficult nights to this moment of peace. The twins, once so fragile and scared, now slept soundly, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and protected. And Noah, who had once doubted his ability to open his heart again, found it overflowing with love for these two precious girls. The pain of his loss would always be a part of him, but it no longer overshadowed the joy of the present. He leaned down, placing a gentle kiss on each of the twins' foreheads. "Good night, my sweet girls," he whispered. "I love you both so much." As Noah quietly left the room, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. He realized that in helping Sarah and Sophie heal, he had found healing for himself as well. The lullaby, once a painful reminder of what he had lost, had become a bridge between his past and his present. a symbol of love that endured and grew stronger with each passing day. The following week, Noah packed the car with all the essentials for a day at the lake: sunscreen, snacks, towels, and a picnic basket. As he strapped Sarah and Sophie into their car seats, he felt a mix of excitement and nostalgia. This lake held so many precious memories of his late daughter, and now he was about to create new ones with the twins. The drive was short, filled with the twins' excited babbling and Noah's gentle responses. As they pulled into the parking lot, the sparkling blue water came into view. Noah's heart skipped a beat, remembering countless summer days spent here with his daughter. "Here we are, girls," Noah said softly as he unbuckled them. "This is a very special place." He carried the twins to a grassy spot near the water's edge, spreading out a large blanket. Sarah and Sophie immediately began to explore, their tiny hands reaching out to touch the grass and flowers around them. Noah watched them with a smile, his heart swelling with love. He remembered his daughter's first time at the lake, how her eyes had widened at the sight of the water, how she had squealed with delight at the feel of sand between her toes. As the morning wore on, Noah helped the twins wade in the shallow water. At first, they were hesitant, clinging to his legs, but soon, their fear turned to joy. Sophie splashed her hands in the water, giggling as droplets flew through the air. Sarah, more cautious, sat at the water's edge, letting the gentle waves lap at her feet. Their laughter echoed across the lake, pure and uninhibited. It was a sound Noah had almost forgotten, the sound of children truly happy and carefree. Each giggle, each squeal of delight, seemed to chip away at the walls of grief around his heart. As he watched the twins play, Noah felt a warmth spreading through his chest. It wasn't the bittersweet ache of memories past, but something new and vibrant. It was hope, blooming like a flower after a long winter. Noah sat in the cozy office of Dr. Melissa Carter, a grief counselor he had started seeing a few weeks ago. The room was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. Noah fidgeted nervously, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "How have you been feeling since our last session, Noah?" Dr. Carter asked gently. Noah took a deep breath. "It's been complicated," he admitted. "I love Sarah and Sophie, I really do. But sometimes when I look at them, I feel this overwhelming guilt, like I'm betraying my daughter's memory somehow." Dr. Carter nodded understandingly. "It's common to feel that way, Noah, but loving the twins doesn't mean you love your daughter any less." Noah's eyes welled up with tears. "I know that in my head, but my heart, it's like there's this constant battle going on inside me." "Let's try something," Dr. Carter suggested. She handed Noah a small, heart-shaped pillow. "I want you to imagine this pillow represents your heart. Now think about your daughter. How much space does she take up in your heart?" Noah clutched the pillow tightly. "All of it," he whispered. "She fills every corner." Dr. Carter smiled softly. "Now I want you to think about Sarah and Sophie. Where do they fit?" Noah stared at the pillow, his brow furrowed. After a moment, his expression softened. They don't take up space. It's like my heart just grows bigger to make room for them." "Exactly," Dr. Carter said. "Love isn't a finite resource, Noah. Your heart has an infinite capacity to love. You're not replacing your daughter, you're adding to your family." As the words sank in, Noah felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Tears streamed down his face, but for the first time in a long while, they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief, of understanding. "It's okay to love them both," Dr. Carter continued softly. "Your daughter will always be a part of you, and that love will never diminish. But you also have so much love to give to Sarah and Sophie." Noah nodded, a small smile breaking through his tears. I think I'm finally starting to understand that," he said. "My daughter would have wanted me to be happy, to love again. And these girls, they need that love so much." As the session came to an end, Noah felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He realized that his heart was big enough for both the cherished memories of his daughter and the growing love he had for the twins. It wasn't about choosing one over the other. It was about embracing all the love in his life. As the calendar turned to June, Noah found himself staring at the circled date. It was just a week away, Sarah and Sophie's first birthday with him. His heart swelled with a mixture of excitement and a touch of sadness. He couldn't help but remember the birthdays he had celebrated with his own daughter, the joy and laughter that had filled their home. Noah took a deep breath and pushed those bittersweet memories aside. This was a new chapter, and he was determined to make it special for the twins. He headed to the local party store, pushing a cart down the aisles filled with colorful decorations. Balloons, he murmured to himself, picking up a pack of pastel-colored ones. As he shopped, Noah found himself smiling more and more. He imagined the girls' faces lighting up at the sight of the decorations, their little hands reaching for the shiny balloons. It warmed his heart in a way he hadn't felt in years. Back at home, Noah set about transforming the living room. He hung streamers from the ceiling, their soft colors catching the light. Balloons bobbed gently in every corner, and a banner reading, "Happy First Birthday, Sarah and Sophie," stretched across the fireplace. In the kitchen, Noah faced his next challenge, the birthday cake. He had never been much of a baker, but he was determined to make this cake himself. Armed with a box mix and a tub of frosting, he set to work. "Okay, girls," he said to the twins, who were watching curiously from their high chairs, "let's see if Daddy can do this without burning the house down." To his surprise and relief, the cake turned out pretty well. It might not win any baking competitions, but it was made with love. As he carefully spread the pink frosting, Noah felt a lump form in his throat. He remembered his late wife doing the same thing for their daughters' birthdays, her steady hands creating beautiful designs. "I wish you could be here to see this," he whispered, blinking back tears. But as he looked at Sarah and Sophie, their faces alight with wonder at the transformation of their home, Noah felt a sense of peace settle over him. This was a new family, a new joy, and he was grateful for every moment. On the day of the twins' birthday, Noah's home buzzed with excitement. The doorbell rang, and he opened it to find his closest friends and supportive community members filing in, their arms laden with gifts and warm smiles on their faces. "Oh, Noah," exclaimed Mrs. Thompson, his elderly neighbor. "The house looks wonderful." She patted his arm affectionately as she entered. Noah felt a rush of gratitude as he watched the small group gather in his living room. These were the people who had stood by him through the challenging months of adoption and adjustment. They had offered advice, lent a listening ear, and even babysat when he needed a break. Sarah and Sophie, dressed in matching pink dresses, sat in their high chairs, their eyes wide with wonder at all the commotion. Noah couldn't help but chuckle at their bewildered expressions. "All right, everyone," Noah announced, his voice filled with warmth. "Let's sing happy birthday to these two special girls." As the group broke into song, Noah felt his heart swell. The twins' faces lit up with delight, tiny hands clapping along to the music. Sophie let out a giggle that made everyone laugh, while Sarah watched the candles on the cake with intense fascination. When it came time to blow out the candles, Noah leaned down between the girls. "Make a wish," he whispered, then gently blew out the flames. The room erupted in applause, and Noah felt a tear of joy slip down his cheek. As he watched his friends help the twins unwrap their gifts, Noah was struck by the realization of how far they'd all come. The girls who had once cried through the night were now laughing and playing, surrounded by love. "You've done an amazing job, Noah," said Mark, his old friend from college, clapping him on the back. "These girls are lucky to have you." Noah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He looked around the room, taking in the scene of joy and celebration. This was his family now, not just Sarah and Sophie, but this entire community that had embraced them. As he cut the cake and passed out slices, Noah felt a sense of peace wash over him. The grief for his daughter would always be a part of him, but it no longer overshadowed the joy he felt in this moment. He had created a new family, one filled with love, laughter, and hope for the future. As the birthday party wound down and guests began to leave, Noah found himself standing in the quiet of the living room. Sarah and Sophie had fallen asleep on their playmat, surrounded by new toys and wrapping paper. He gazed at their peaceful faces, marveling at how much they had grown and changed in just a few short months. Noah's eyes drifted to the mantel, where a photo of his late daughter stood next to a new picture of the twins. The sight no longer brought sharp pain, but a bittersweet warmth. He picked up both frames, holding them side by side. "Look at how far we've come," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He thought back to the day he first met Sarah and Sophie at the adoption center. How scared and uncertain he had been. The journey hadn't been easy. There were nights of endless crying, moments of doubt, and times when grief threatened to overwhelm him. But there had also been laughter, first steps, and tiny hands reaching for him in the dark. Noah set the frames back on the mantel and sank into his favorite armchair. He closed his eyes, remembering the day he discovered the twins' connection to his old friend. It had felt like a sign then, and now he was sure of it. His daughter's loss had led him to these two precious girls who needed him just as much as he needed them. A soft whimper from Sophie made Noah open his eyes. He watched as Sarah, still asleep, reached out and took her sister's hand. The simple gesture brought tears to Noah's eyes. In that moment, Noah realized that healing didn't mean forgetting. His love for his daughter would always be a part of him, shaping the father he had become to Sarah and Sophie. He had found a way to honor her memory while embracing the joy and love these two little girls brought into his life. As he looked at the sleeping twins, Noah felt a profound sense of peace and purpose. He had been given a second chance at fatherhood, and he was determined to make the most of it. With a heart full of love for both the daughter he had lost and the daughters he had found, Noah knew that this was exactly where he was meant to be. As the days passed, Noah found himself settling into a comfortable routine with Sarah and Sophie. The twins, now toddlers, were growing more independent and curious about the world around them. One sunny afternoon, Noah set up a small table in the living room with colorful crayons and paper. He smiled as he watched Sarah and Sophie toddle over, their eyes wide with excitement. "Let's draw our family," Noah suggested gently, helping the girls into their seats. Sarah immediately grabbed a blue crayon while Sophie reached for a bright yellow one. Noah sat back, watching with wonder as their little hands moved across the paper. "Who's that?" Noah asked, pointing to a stick figure Sarah had drawn. "Daddy!" Sarah exclaimed, beaming up at him. Noah's heart swelled with love. He turned to Sophie's drawing where she had scribbled 3 figures holding hands. "And who are these people?" he asked softly. "Us," Sophie giggled, pointing to each figure in turn. "Me, Sarah, and Daddy." Noah felt a lump form in his throat. These 2 little girls who had come into his life through such unexpected circumstances now saw him as their father, and he realized with a surge of emotion that he truly felt like their dad. As the afternoon light began to fade, Noah gathered up the drawings and helped the twins prepare for bed. He tucked them in, just as he had done countless times before, but tonight felt different. There was a sense of peace and contentment that settled over him as he kissed each girl on the forehead. "Good night, my little artists," he whispered, turning on their nightlight. Standing in the doorway, Noah looked back at Sarah and Sophie, their eyes already heavy with sleep. He thought about the journey that had brought them together, the loss, the pain, and ultimately, the love that had healed them all. In that moment, Noah knew with certainty that this was where he belonged. Even in the darkest times of his life, love had found a way to guide him to these 2 precious girls who needed him as much as he needed them. If you enjoyed the story of Noah and the twins, Sarah and Sophia, I handpicked this next story that will touch your heart. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.